felt like you needed to be louder, more polished, or put together just to be taken seriously as a leader, then this episode is for you. Because I spent years believing that leadership meant being on all the time, and that confidence was something I had to fake until I made it. But quiet leadership, the real, aligned, purpose-driven leadership, isn't about pretending. It's about remembering who you already are. First, I have to share a disclaimer for this episode. If you do not follow me on social media at Gina Marie Fit, then you probably missed that I had a colonoscopy and endoscopy and had biopsies done on Friday. And as I am recording this podcast, it is Sunday, and I am still straining to speak after my endoscopy. So I am doing my best to get the audio quality to be worthy of listening. But if you notice a raspiness or a change in tone, your girl is still on the mend. I am, after sharing my situation, considering doing an entire episode about my GI condition, the progress and the way I was diagnosed, and what the last 12 years have looked like having a chronic illness, because I have an overwhelming amount of DMs of people with similar situations, similar symptoms, asking me about supplements, medications I've taken, how did I get to this point? And so even though for the longest time I did not want to talk about my illness because I just don't like having a condition like I have, I think it might be time to open up the whole conversation about gut health and true GI issues, because these are extremely common. And even though it feels like sometimes it's TMI, it is a normal process of our body that we all need to be healthy and function. And so I am working on that episode. So if that is something you want to listen to, let your girl know, because I am really nervous to put my literal stuff out there and tell the world about my body and the things my body cannot do unless it's heavily medicated to assist. So that is where we are at. Your girl was resting, and I just returned to work today, and I am so exhausted. I think it's so funny that I have, one, to be forced by a physician to even take a day off, but two, when I do take a day off and I'm out of routine, I generally think I have a harder time because I've conditioned my body to operate at such an extensive level that as somebody that's been used to being a high producer, it really is hard to slow down, but that is what this year is for. It's growth and changing and evolving. So we said we were going to talk about stigmatized topics and open up and be vulnerable. And as I continue, I've had hiccups since the procedure. So if you hear me, I am so sincerely sorry. But I said I was going to be consistent and post an episode every Tuesday. Good, bad, or better. And so here we are. I've had hiccups for 2 freaking days. But let's get into this whole concept of quiet confidence to be better leaders and better people. So, the myth of loud leadership. I think we should start by calling out one of the biggest lies that we've been sold, and that is that volume equals value. The tone and strength of your voice doesn't necessarily mean that person is a strong leader. We've glorified people who are loud, constantly visible, and oversharing as markers of quote unquote leaders. But some of the most influential people lead in silence, and still they shift cultures and make game-changing decisions for their companies. Leadership isn't about how loudly you speak, it's about what you speak and why. Because quiet confidence commands the room without demanding attention. When you look at performance versus presence, you can't lead from your truth when you're performing for approval. I used to show up in rooms over-prepared, over-caffeinated, under-rested, just to feel like I had to do all of those things to be taken seriously. Presence doesn't come from perfection, it comes from alignment. And when you show up with presence, people lean in, even if you're speaking at a whispering tone. Something that I've fully been embracing, and I recently made a reel about this, is the power in the pause. You don't have to respond immediately, and you don't have to act instantly. Now, we are here to be open, honest, and authentic, so I'm going to tell you things that I've really done wrong as a leader. One of the things that I used to do wrong and I've grown a lot in is the ability to click backspace and delete my triggered response. So oftentimes in leadership, you deal with negatives, you deal with everything that's wrong, and you rarely ever get recognized. And that can be a struggle. It really is hard to be working as hard as you are. And most of the time you're dealing with complaints or things that people think you should be doing. And there's, that constant feeling it's never enough. And rarely do you hear just the word thank you for your effort. And so Slack is a great example, whatever communication channel you and your company use. But there are times in my past where I have popped off, full disclosure, been triggered because somebody said something, and instead of thinking about what I wanted to say, I just immediately responded, or would call my co-conspirator management person, however you want to call my partner in crime, and lost my shit. And when I look back on it, it's really just wasted energy. The amount of times I've stressed myself out over the dumbest, most minuscule, stupid shit that no one needed to stress about. It wasn't that serious. None of it's actually that serious. I feel like getting sick again is always that reminder for me. Just having a chronic illness where you get no warning signs that okay, on Tuesday at 6 p.m., your body's going to start rejecting everything you eat and you're going to get super weak and you're not going to be able to function. There's no warning signs to anything I go through. And so when I have these bouts, and this has been my longest one in the history of my diagnosis, I have really had to take a step back. And if you've been listening to this podcast since the beginning of the year, if not, go back and listen, because at the beginning of the year, your girl, I was living awards, accolades. I had articles written about me. Events were going well. My company that I founded had expanded. I had expanded the podcast into interviews. Everything I said I was going to do, I was already doing. And then I got sick. And everything had to slow down. And then at one point, everything had to stop. And when I have all this time, especially now, because I've been home alone in my apartment, I've really had to rest more than I think I've ever had in my entire life. It's something about the quiet and the pause and in being in these moments where you realize, you have to do what you have to do. There are priorities. I cannot, not do my job. But the things that you wasted your energy on, the things that really are shown to be important, it's not everything you think. And oftentimes what I do now, and this is me being honest, is I will type my response and then I will delete it and never send it. But in some way you feel like you're getting what you need to say out, you feel like you're being heard. And then I delete it and I respond at a later time. And something I've learned because of all of these transitions and growth, honestly, I'm just trying to be a better human being. And in return, you become a better leader, is that leadership often lives in this pause. The breath before the decision, the silence before the speech, the decision to click backspace and delete that heated response that really no one needed to see, because at the end of the day, this is life and it's going to keep moving regardless or not. So not every response does, not every conversation or post needs a response, And because of that, people respect those people who think before they speak and lead with intention, not impulse, significantly more. And I feel like that's the space I'm stepping into now, is that I used to act out of impulse and it didn't always fare well for me, and I wasn't always the best leader because of it. And now I'm learning that I'm not indecisive for being thoughtful. It's actually quite powerful for choosing when to act and when not to act. And I think that's a sign of a true leader, is knowing when and at what times are you supposed to react. And so leadership, it isn't about being loud. So then you're probably asking yourself, if it's not, then what is it actually built on? So I feel like this is a great transition moment to talk about the foundation of leadership, which in my opinion is actually boundaries. Boundaries are leadership, point blank, period. Most people think leadership is about how much you can give, and I have been that person. Literally, anybody that knows me knows 16, 18 hours a day I have worked, but I have obviously been burned because of that. I have learned through all of this is that it's actually supposed to be about how clearly you can define what you won't. It's not about how much you're willing to give to others. It's about knowing how much you won't. Boundaries truly are the equivalent of self-respect, and I didn't respect myself. I didn't think I was a good leader. I have questioned if I've even meant to do what I do on more than one occasion. I am the person what ifing my life to death, afraid, truly just afraid to say things or do things or make the wrong decision or upset somebody, and it causes a ripple effect. But the reality is, when you do learn about boundaries and you actually learn how to embrace them, you have a renewed sense of self-respect, and you realize what you will and will not tolerate. And because of this, every time you say yes when you actually mean no, you're diluting your leadership capabilities. You cannot lead others if you're abandoning yourself in the process. And I know I'm not trying to be a martyr when I do this, but I know that things need to be done a certain way. And regardless of what I have going on in my life, I want to uphold that standard, because as leaders, you are responsible for other people. And I know for myself, I want the most and the best for my team. And trying to uphold that standard, sometimes you lose yourself because you want what's best for everybody around you, because you genuinely love them so much. So how do we lead without feeling like we always have to be the martyr? I feel like that is an important question, because you don't have to be a martyr to be a good leader. Burning out doesn't make us noble, it makes us unavailable. I used to wear overextension like a badge of honor, literally 16, 18-hour work days, until I realized I was leading from depletion, and by doing that, I was doing a bad job. When you lead from overflow instead of obligation, you model sustainability. Healthy leadership leaves room for breath, joy, and stillness. You should have a life outside of being a leader, and that will enable you to lead without feeling guilty. Y'all, guilt is the master manipulator. It tells you you're selfish for needing space, but leadership without boundaries leads to resentment. I've been there. I have resented my jobs, and I'm sure you can say the same thing. You can say not right now with compassion and still be a powerful leader. It doesn't mean we're not hearing our teammate. It doesn't mean we're not listening, but maybe the time isn't right for that opinion to be shared, or that idea that somebody is really passionate about. Sometimes things have to be tabled until later. Respect doesn't come from sacrificing yourself. It comes from standing rooted in your own needs. And I feel like my getting sick is my forced reminder, because I wasn't doing a good job with my boundaries and taking care of my own needs. I think oftentimes boundaries teach others how to treat us. And even more than that, they reinforce the truth that you don't have to lose yourself to lead others. And that is what brings us to something I know you all feel deeply about, and that's visibility. Visibility without losing yourself requires being seen without feeling terrified to be seen, especially when the world rewards a version of you that isn't fully honest. Y'all, I think we all fear being misunderstood. Many of us hide because we've been misread, misjudged, or dismissed before. I know that I had a lot of healing to do in this category because I always say that I have the best intentions, but the outcomes are always questionable. And I think sometimes when you want things so badly and you work so hard at them, that somehow you get lost in the shuffle, and it feels safer to just blend in than to risk truly being seen and to be rejected or for people not to like you. But being misunderstood doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're real. Because real talk, we weren't born to be easily digested. We aren't for everybody. And because of that, we step into our greatest power when we realize that we were born to be true. I think one of the things that I am actively learning myself is the importance of letting go of the mask. Every mask you wear for acceptance truly becomes a barrier between you and your purpose, and I think it makes life harder. I used to shrink my voice in rooms full of louder people because I was afraid I didn't belong there. Now, this year specifically has taught me that I have been blessed to be in rooms with people I have followed, been inspired by, and I used to hold them up on this pedestal. And now I know that we literally exist in the same space and that silence sometimes is becoming my superpower. Because when you stop performing, you start connecting. And over the last 6 months, as I've had to really be intentional with what I'm doing and who I'm being around, because I knew I wasn't already feeling well long before I told anybody, I got quiet. And I really sat with myself and had to ask myself, are we proud of who we are? Are we proud of the work we're doing? Do we really think we're in the direction we're supposed to be going? Because leadership isn't about how many people follow you. It's about how deeply they feel seen by you. And I genuinely think, like, not tooting my own horn, I think this is my superpower. My ability to make people feel loved and heard and seen and included, even though sometimes it bites me in the ass, I will never change because I think I carry with me my abandonment issues. I think I'm going to have them the rest of my life. And I never want anyone to ever feel the pain of being given up or made to feel like you weren't enough, or that maybe if you were thinner, prettier, tried harder, got another degree, maybe that somehow would have healed you and people would have wanted to be in your life. Because I know that's not the case. And so owning your seat is something that as you continue this personal growth journey that is leadership, you will learn you don't need to do it. You need to own it. When you walk into a room like you were meant to be there, not because you're perfect, because no one is, but because you're prepared by life itself, you hold yourself in a different standard. Quiet leaders don't need the spotlight to shine. Full disclosure, and I'm not being rude when I say this, but a lot of times, at least in the leadership role that I've been in over the course of these last literally 5 to 10 years, because I've held leadership roles in healthcare and in fitness, a lot of the times there are zero accolades or recognition. You're usually the one that is putting in the most hours, doing the most, and like far often than not, you really get nothing out of it outside of your paycheck. And for me, I just like hearing thank you. I know how hard I work. I know damn well what I do day in and day out. But for me, I think this is why I love working with the aging population for a lot of reasons. But there is something about when that person says thank you when you're leaving their session that you genuinely know they appreciated your efforts that you don't get with my current generation, because I really do think people are far too entitled and think they're far too deserving when they just take for granted everyday occurrences instead of slowing down, being in the moment, and simply just being appreciative of the person who is working so hard to make your experience what it is. But what's powerful is it's not about the volume. It was actually always about alignment. Now, let's go a little deeper, because real confidence, it's not something we can perform. It's actually something we have to reclaim. I've talked about this before. I call this the confidence loop. Confidence isn't a finish line. It truly is a daily decision to show up from your core, even when your voice shakes, even when you question your worth, even if you feel like you're not enough. Confidence is built, it's not born. This is my personal opinion. Some people may say different, but I didn't wake up feeling confident. I still don't feel confident. Like, full disclosure, do not feel confident in anything I'm doing right now, because I've been shaken to my core since I've been sick and been completely derailed from my plan this year. But I am building my confidence brick by brick through action. Like, I am building confidence in the actions and goals I have because I know I'm doing the work. The path might just be taking longer than I anticipated, which I feel like is the story of adulting. Confidence is going to grow when your actions align with your values. The more you show up, the more you prove to yourself that you're capable. You don't wait for confidence. You truly create it through repetition. And I think that's the most beautiful thing, because it's about consistency and showing up. Courage comes first. Every confident leader you admire once stood in a room terrified. I promise you about that. You will not always feel ready, and that's okay. Lead anyway. Courage is feeling fear and choosing to move with integrity. Confidence follows courage. It's not the other way around. But at the end of the day, and I know this is hard for a lot of people, I have these moments too, validation is not and cannot be the goal. If your confidence depends on applause, it's not confidence, it's performance. And it's going to bite you in the ass, I promise you. True leadership is built in the quiet moments when no one's watching. The less you chase approval, recognition, and accolades, the more grounded you become in your purpose, who you are, and the kind of leader you're becoming. Confidence isn't loud, it's rooted, and it doesn't need a crowd to exist. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring this baby full circle. Because whether you're leading a business, a classroom, a team, or your own healing journey, your most powerful leadership is going to come from within. So let's say this together. You are not too quiet. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are exactly the kind of leader that this world needs. Because it's time to define success on your terms. Success doesn't have to look like hustle, noise, or grind. And I wish I had a mirror because I need to say that to myself. Define what aligned leadership looks like for you, and then please protect that vision and your peace at all costs. Your version of leadership may not look like anyone else's, and that's what makes it magnetic, authentic, and validates that you belong in the space you're in. Leading from within while staying rooted, even when the world tries to sway you, question you, or push you, is going to be your superpower. Because your energy is your message. People don't just listen to what you say, they feel how you show up. When you walk in alignment, people trust you even before you speak. You don't have to sell your truth, you just have to embody it. Your grounded presence speaks louder than any pitch ever could. And the magic is that the quiet disruptors are the ones who change the world. You don't need to be loud to leave a legacy. The world is looking for leaders who lead with heart, with value, with intention, and don't sway just because they're met with resistance. Every time you choose alignment over performance, you lead someone else to do the same. Please remember, you don't need to shout, you just need to stand firm. So, if you've been doubting your voice because it's not loud enough, if you question your leadership because it doesn't look like theirs, please let me remind you that you don't have to lose yourself to lead powerfully. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're not too quiet, you are actually ready. So take this with you this week. Choose one moment to show up differently. Say no where you'd usually say yes. Speak up when you normally stay silent. Rest when you normally push. Or maybe click that backspace button and don't send that message. These small moments will build your quiet confidence. As always, I feel very blessed to be here and to have you listening. So thank you for tuning in to Mindset, Health, and Empowerment, the Unfiltered Trainer. If today's episode hit home, please don't forget to subscribe, whether you're on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, so you never miss a moment of real talk and raw truth. And while you're there, do me the biggest favor and leave a 5-star review. It helps more badass humans like you find the show and be a part of this unfiltered movement. And remember, please always be bold, be honest, be authentic, be badass, and be you. And P.S. Please be kind to people. I genuinely believe that we can put the human back in humanity. We just have to start with one. All right, y'all. I'll catch you next week, and I'll see you in the next episode.